Exactly 1 month ago, on February 17th, at this same time, we were privileged and blessed to have the director of cricket for Cricket West Indies answering questions on our show. It was a very, very excited occasion for us at the Cricket Forum. And you, the viewers, reacted by over 11,000 of you watching that interview. This morning again, it is our privilege to welcome the Director of Cricket for Cricket West Indies, Mr. Bile Bascom, to the #1 cricket channel in the Caribbean. Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Cricket Forum. Good morning, Mr. Bascom, and once again, welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers. Quite a few of them, apparently.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bascom. Sir, let's start where we started on the previous occasion. At that time, I asked you about your reaction to the series thus far, and you'd have stated a number of things that you were pleased with and a number of things that you were looking at. We have seen where the ball have been changed to the Duke ball, and in the previous 3 rounds of matches, an average of 6 centuries were scored in each round. Now that you have changed to the Duke ball, we still have an average of 6 centuries. Total 31 centuries have been scored over the last 5 rounds of the tournament. Do you think is a matter of the batsmen now becoming more reliable, now becoming more determined and raising their level more than just the ball?
Well, definitely. I think it was really heartening for me to see that the trend continue in terms of the number of centuries that are being scored. And I waited, to ensure that it wasn't just a case of a bias, the kookaburra ball being more favorable to the batters. And clearly, while we have seen the fast bowlers come through in the last couple of rounds, we are still seeing, really credible performances from the batsmen. So you have to say that there is indeed, a trend in the right direction in terms of batting in the West Indies Championship.
What else about the performances that you are pleased with, except for the batsmen? We saw where with this Duke ball, someone, for example, Kpis, his number of wickets I think you have just gotten 5 wickets in the 2 matches compared to the 27 that he got before. And so looking at the overall picture, I just use Pierre as an example. How do you think that the bowlers, you mentioned the fast bowlers, Aljari Joseph getting wickets, Rohan Ali Mohammed, but we still see the spinners at the top of the chart?
Yes, I think the spinners really had a pretty good head start coming out of those first 3 rounds. You would see that there has been a shift in terms of the number of overs bowled by fast bowlers. Clearly, there is a bit more assistance from the Duke ball for fast bowlers. So you have fast bowlers bowling longer spells, bowling more overs, which sort of push back, the point at which spinners come into the attack. You look at that game, Barbados versus Trinidad, and you saw Seals and Anderson coming back for follow-up spells, and still were able to get the ball to do a few things. So I suspect as we go into round 6 and 7, we will see probably more of the same, probably fast bowlers coming into the fray a little bit more, given that, there was a little bit more assistance with the Duke's ball. But again, Kerry Pay, I'm sure if you compare the overs that he bowled in the first block to what he bowled in the last 2 rounds, there would have been a significant reduction in the number of overs, which of course lessens the opportunity he has to take wickets.
Okay, sir. As I would have mentioned to you before we went on here, I have been bombarded with questions that I should ask you. And this is a question from a lady and her husband who I met in a supermarket. And it said, the England cricket team have not played in Jamaica for a quarter of a century. I'm not quite sure about the numbers, but I'm giving it to you for a quarter of a century. Why is it that the England cricket team have not played in Jamaica for such a long time, and also no age group cricket competition is being held in Jamaica? And the West Indies woman, she said that she have never seen the West Indies woman played in Jamaica. How do you address those issues, sir?
Okay, so I'll start with England. So what we have done, as you know, I mean, it's no secret that India and England, those tours are the ones that are most profitable for Cricket West Indies. So generally, those matches are allocated based on a bid process, right? So the territories which would attract those England matches are territories that would have placed a bid through their governments to have those matches played in their territories. Obviously, you know that England in particular has a huge following. And so strategically for some governments, they seize the opportunity to promote their countries, etc. So Jamaica would not have bid recently for England matches, and hence the reason why England hasn't been there. Just give me again the other part of the question.
The other part is the age group cricket competition. Why is there no age group cricket competition? It's been played in Jamaica. And the lady said that she have never seen the West Indies women team played in Jamaica.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the age group tournaments, I mean, these tournaments are generally run, we try to run them as efficient as possible, which usually means playing them where we have the most favorable host budgets, right? And unfortunately, Jamaica is not the cheapest place to play cricket. And so that is one reason why we have not moved around our age group tournaments as much as, as we have previously, because we have tried to anchor them in territories where we have sort of favorable conditions, we have support from governments, etc. But we also do recognize that there is a need for the players to move around the region and get exposed to different conditions. So, for example, the under-19 tournament, which was played in St. Vincent, probably for about 3 or 4 years, is now going to be played in St. Kitts. So as long as we start to have those conversations with Jamaica and we start to enjoy, some of the benefits that we get from other governments in the region, we'll be happy to bring cricket, age group cricket, back to Jamaica. And in terms of the women, again, we have really now started to expand our women's program. So there are going to be more tours upcoming, and it's very likely that we will have women's cricket in Jamaica. We have also looked at the possibility of anchoring the women's Super 50 tournament and then moving around the women's T20 Blaze, for the same reason that because we are going to have more cricket in the region, home series, then we want our women players to have experience playing, at all of the international venues across the region at the regional level. So cricket certainly will come. Just a couple of years ago, there was hardly any international cricket in Jamaica, and of course, of late, you have seen that there is a genuine move towards, trying to revive the interest in cricket in Jamaica. And of course, the best way to do that is, to have cricket available for young persons and old persons alike to be able to come and watch.
Thank you, sir. Let us welcome Dwight. Dwight, welcome to the show, Dwight.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Good morning to all your listeners. Special good morning to you, Sir Bascom. Really a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Good morning, Dwight. I assume that so now we have fast bowlers at both ends.
So,
I
so,
was, I
so
was told
that
to be
question,
prepared for some bouncers and some Yorkers. So,
well, you know what happens on this show. So,
right.
that was
Go
a
ahead
good
with
question
your
about
question.
cricket. That was a good question on cricket. But the question I have for you has to do with our under 19 players. We have seen that our under 19 players, despite the some people would say the underfunding or the lack of a more expansive age group cricket tournament in the region, we have nonetheless seen that our under 19 cricketers have been able to compete with the very best. We on the show have mentioned some of the statistics since 2000 until now, and our under 19 group are among some of the best in the world. But then we have noticed that while the likes of Harry Brook and Jaiswal and even Joe Root, that they have pushed on from the under 19 level onwards once they start playing first class cricket. We have noticed that our cricketers, the likes of Athanaze and Anderson and Wickham, Chandrapal, Brathwaite, that they have not been able to move on to being elite test cricketers or even elite first class cricketers. Now, my question to you is, why do you believe that that is so, and what are you doing to try to change this?
Okay. So first bouncer of the day. I definitely agree. I don't think anyone can argue that our under 19 players at that level, show as much talent and potential as any of the other under 19 players we would see at a ICC under 19 World Cup. The clear difference is that when they move out, when they transition out of under 19 level, while your Harry Brook and Joe Roots, etc., will likely go to a county, they'll play maybe second 11 cricket, but they will have that full-time support of the county to develop their skills. Prior to the academy, we did not really have an avenue for our young players who could not break into a franchise team, into a regional first class team immediately. We did not have that avenue for them to provide them with that support. So the academy has started to help to bridge that gap, especially now that it provides them with the opportunity to play first class cricket. We have also worked closely with CCC to get that program back online, as that is another avenue for young persons, in that college and university age, to access that high level of cricket, that would allow them to be able to push on to the next level. So there's still a lot to be done. Ideally, our franchises should be able to offer a little bit more support to these players, even if they have not been able to break into the team that plays in the West Indies Championship. Ideally, we would like for them to have support from the franchise. What we have done recently as well is that we have hired pathway coaches in each territory, so that we can offer some support to these players. I'll give an example of what we do in terms of our under 19 program. So about 2 years out, before the World Cup, we would identify a group of players. We will start to put some support around them in their territory. And, that allows us to really have a full year of preparation pretty much ahead of any World Cup. And what we need to be able to do now is to continue that support for these players after they come out of under 19. Some of them will come into the academy, but unfortunately we can't take them all. But we can still provide them support through our pathway coaches to ensure that they have that ongoing training. And then now through the under 23 program, which we started recently, in a lot of cases that allows for some bilateral cricket. We plan to have the under 23 regional tournament by 2027. But in every territory, CWI has provided funding for an under 23 program that would allow these players coming out of under 19 to have ongoing cricket to look forward to. And of course, I'm sure you've heard now of the the Breakout T20 League, which is going to be another avenue, something to keep these players interested in cricket and have them striving towards improving their games, and basically keeping them on our radar so that we could continue to support them and widen the pool of players that we have contending for senior West Indies selection.
Okay, very good.
Just
I'm really glad.
Just a minute, Dwight, because I have a question that, once again, I was given this question, and it is probably a follow-up to the question that you have asked. This lady from Paradise in Westmoreland said to me that Australia Academy played in their regional tournament some years ago. And after a year or two, they pulled their academy team out of the Sheffield Shield. Because she believes that we are not getting value for money with the West Indies A team and the CCC team in the regional 4-day tournament. So I'm asking the question, are we getting value for money from those teams? And for the first time, the West Indies Academy is an all-year venture. You have them there for the entire year. Give us an understanding of the structural operation of the academy from a day-to-day basis, and what are the KPIs established for these recruits to meet?
Right. So in terms of value, I mean, I think there's tremendous value in the academy program and having the academy play first-class cricket. What we would recognize, which sort of ties into the question that I was asked previously, is that when you look at your Jarut and your Harry Brook, by the time they get to 23, 24, and the number of first-class matches they would have played, you know, and pretty much the same for any other territory that is ahead of us in world cricket. The number of first-class matches, it's almost incomparable. So what the academy and CCC in the first-class tournament allows to happen is that these players start to get that first-class experience while they're still, you know, honing their skills and understanding their own games. So they are experiencing the highest level of cricket available in the region. They start to get an understanding of what it takes to become consistent at that level. So if you take an example like young Bowen Tuckett, who played with the academy last year, and now you know, he seems to be, you know, moving into another level of his batting, scoring his maiden century and following it up with a couple of half centuries as well. And then you have a Johan Lane who is up there in terms of wickets for fast bowlers, now in his second season playing for the academy. And I think one of the things that we recognize is that the academy program, it's not necessarily a one-year program. And what people like Lane and Tuckett has shown us is that, you know, you lay a foundation in year one, and potentially in year two, you can start to see the fruits of that foundation being laid. And similar with CCC, the academy now has Jediah Blades. He came to the fore through the CCC program. And as you're aware, he would have played, you know, he was selected into the West Indies team and debuted against Bangladesh in the 50 over in the ODI series in December, right? And again, that is a player that came through the CCC program. And then you have probably the biggest ambassador of the CCC program would be Rahman Powell, because that is the part that he came through, you know, and now he is a West Indies T20 star, T20 captain, right? So they definitely establish, they definitely have value in terms of providing other avenues for players to really come to the fore and providing that needed game time. You know, there is no better preparation for cricket than playing cricket, right? And the more games that these players get under the belt at the earlier stage, it's the faster they develop. So there was another part of your question.
It was asking what's the structural operation at the West Indies
Right.
academies like from a day-to-day basis, and what are the
And what are the
KPIs
KPIs?
established for them?
Right. So we have full support for the academy players here. We have a head coach and assistant coach. We have a strength and conditioning coach. We have a physiotherapist. Right. We also have a player well-being consultant, as we put it, because we do recognize that, you know, there are a lot of mental skill development that is required for our players. So they basically work every day to day. They come to training. They have highly individualized programs. They have targets that are set for them in terms of their strength and conditioning. So based on our policy now, we are assessing players, and then we are giving them targets for them to meet within a stipulated period. And, you know, we have seen a lot of growth in our players. We have also learned a lot of lessons in this short time. And I don't think we are at the finished product yet in terms of what our academy program should look like, but we are definitely taking these learnings to ensure that, you know, every iteration of the program, the players will benefit from every group that has gone before them. So so far, I would say that, you know, it has been a tremendous success, notwithstanding the results on the field. But you can certainly look at the development of individual players, and you can tell, you know, that players are making strides.
Thank you. Dwight, you may go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my final question on the development of players. You have mentioned the under-23 program, and I'm glad that you recall that you had made a promise about the under-23 regional tournament. But you have now indicated that there are some changes to that. I'd like some better particulars when you have said that there will be under-23 tournament within each region. And secondly, on the issue of the CCC, there was a complaint last year that there was a lack of preparation of that CCC team going into the tournament. I'd like to know what sort of changes are being done so that CC team is able to meet up before, that they have adequate preparation time so that the players can give a true account of themselves.
All right. So in terms of the under-23 tournament, so the idea is that because we have not had any an ongoing under-23 program, the idea is that we try to ensure that we develop a program in each territory. Some territories are ahead. I'll take Trinidad as an example, because they have had an ongoing under-23 program that was funded by the TTCP. Other territories didn't have any such program. So the plan is for CWI to fund a program in each territory. So that will take, that may take a different, that may have a different outlook based on where that territory is in terms of the development of an under-23 program. In some cases, you have tournaments. In some cases, you have bilateral series taking place, and that will continue to happen. And we anticipate that by 2027, we would probably have the first cohort of players who have gone through under 15, under 17, under 19, and be entering into a full regional under 23 tournament. So that is still very much on the cards, and the plan is to still be able to provide that that funding for territorial boards to continue to develop that program locally, and give them the best chance to prepare teams for that 2027 under 23 tournament. CCC, we again, the CCC program, as you know, would have started a while back, and it, I would say, probably came to a climax when they won a Super 50 tournament, if I recall well. And I myself was part of that program. I played for CCC while I was a student at UWI Cave Hill. And, there was a lot of support there. There was, the facilities at Cave Hill were great at that time. Cave Hill was the home base, if you want to call it that. So you had excellent facilities, you had an indoor facility, and the program was well funded as far as I could tell. I get the sense that a lot of that funding has dried up, and so CWI, has taken an initiative to start discussing an MOU with CCC, so that obviously we recognize the importance of having the CCC team as part of the tournament and giving those students, access to cricket while they pursue their studies. And so we are working on an MOU to ensure that the CCC has the necessary resources, along with what the university can provide and CWI will provide, to be able to prepare themselves and really be able to contend and compete in our regional tournaments.
Okay.
You're really giving us a lot. Just a minute,
Go ahead,
Mr. Bascom is really giving us a lot of information, and we are so enlightened. You mentioned Bowen Tuckett. He has scored 362 runs thus far, and you, Alain, have taken 20 wickets at 26 apiece. So that has been outstanding. I don't want to leave out the persons in the chat, so West Indies Sport is asking, and the comment there is on the screen. Any West Indies A-team tours plan to harness the talent that was discovered during the regionals?
Well, we have a West Indies A-team tour against South Africa that comes up in May, on to about the 10th of June, that will have 3 one-day matches and 2 4-day matches. That, especially the 4-day matches, because they come so close to the Australia series, that will definitely be used as prep, right? Because our West Indies Championship finished on the 12th of April. And so there wouldn't be any cricket until those 18 matches. So that 18 tour will likely be used as prep leading into likely a camp before the Australia series. But definitely where there are opportunities to integrate players who have impressed in the regional season, they will definitely be integrated. Additionally, the academy will have a home series against a Sri Lanka emerging team. So they come, there will be a slight overlap. I think that starts early June and runs until close to the end of June. So there will be a slight overlap with those 2 tournaments. So across that academy series and the A-team series, quite a number of players will get opportunities to play against foreign opposition.
And Patrick Lambert is very concerned about the form of Alec Athanaze, and Michael Douglas is asking, why are the players not scoring big hundreds despite 32 centuries? We only have 10 scores, I think. Is a 10 or 11 score above 120? That's just from my memory, but Michael Douglas is asking, why are they not scoring more big centuries? And Patrick is concerned about the form of Athanaze.
Well, in terms of the centuries, I'll take the centuries at this point because that is an improvement from, it's a marked improvement from where we have been in the last few years. And I expect that, it will get progressively better. We are seeing that, there is competition, which is great. And that is what competition will breed. It will breed performances. And I expect, so this year may be the year for centuries, and then as the bar gets pushed higher and higher, then it making 102 or 105, might not be enough to really put your head out above the others, and so that pressure I am expecting, to force batsmen to actually do better still.
I love that answer. Yes. Dwight, over to you.
Sure. We're talking regional cricket now. I'm glad the scores in the regional tournament was mentioned so far. So we have seen what appeared to be an upshot in the number of centuries over the first 5 rounds of cricket. But we have noticed as well that a lot of these centuries are being scored against the weaker bowling. And when our players are coming up against the stiffer bowling, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, that they're not putting up strong numbers against those teams. The Barbados versus Trinidad game, for example, was noteworthy in watching a lineup that most Caribbean people thought was a premier lineup within the West Indies being shut out for some paltry score in both innings. My question to you is, shouldn't we be thinking about making adjustments to the regional tournament, wherein we will start off playing some games against the different territories, but at some point in time, we select the very best and move them into some premier rounds so that we have the best routinely playing against the best to sharpen our cricketers and prepare them for test cricket?
Well, I would be guided by Carlton, who I'm sure has the stats on hand in terms of the number of centuries that may have been scored against, well, what you might determine to be weaker bowling. I mean, it's when I think about it, for example, you might assume that the academy has a weaker bowling unit, but they have probably the fast bowler, one of the fast bowlers with the most wickets in lane. And they also have a spinner who is among the most wickets as well in Bishop, right? And then of course you have a Blades who has made an international debut. You have a Kelvin Pittman who probably is one of the faster bowlers going around the region at this point. So it might be difficult to term the academy as a weaker bowling unit. If you look at CCC, you have Akeem Jordan, who is probably the fast bowler with the most wickets. Now you have Shima Holder there, a former international. You have spinner, his name slips me at this moment, who has been very consistent over the years in terms of picking up wickets. So I don't know that I would say that any of these bowling attacks are weak. But in terms of the best playing the best, I think we have gone through the Headley weeks, and I think we all recognize the potential that series has in terms of steel sharpening steel, which I think is the point that you're making. But the reality of that series, and I will go back as far as when I was a selector, because I would have come in to watch a couple of those series, and it lacks context, right? Because each territorial team playing for their country in the West Indies Championship trying to win. When you get into a Headley or Weeks team, there isn't the same sort of drive and pride, because a lot of times there isn't much on the line in terms of what you are playing for, right? And so that is one of the reasons why we moved away from the Headley Week series. As good as the idea of it is in terms of having players, the best players play against the best players. What we saw, it didn't manifest to be that way, right? Because the games just seemed to lack a lot of context, and the intensity levels were a little bit lower. So probably if we can put some thought into how we really add some context to that series, it's something that we could definitely relook. But the idea now is that after we have played our regional tournaments, that the next level up would be for the best players to really challenge themselves against players probably of the same level coming from other countries. So we will continue to push for A-team tours. They are not the easiest to arrange given, the packed cricket schedule, and the proliferation of leagues around the world. But definitely we have had a good relationship with South Africa. We are developing a good relationship with Sri Lanka, and we will continue to push towards trying to have a home series A-team, a home and away series for the A-team, and having that be the place where our players, get to compete on a level above our regional tournament.
Thank you.
Tell me if I can follow up.
And then go to you, Dwight. And this is from me now, sir. This is not from the fans. There is a legacy hotel in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Wonderful hotel. They have a cricket program. They have invited me down on a number of occasions to stream matches that they are playing at the hotel. And the turnout is always amazing. I have watched West Indies played in Antigua and St. Kitts in particularly. Those are the two that is coming to my mind. Getting a feedback. And on a number of occasions, I will see cruise ships in the port, but in the ground are empty. And the question I'm trying to ask, do we seek to work out the logistics when these cruise ships are coming in and when our cricket is playing, and at least have an advertisement in the hotels to say that cricket is there?
Unfortunately, you're taking me out of my domain as in terms of the technical aspects of cricket into probably what would be the commercial aspects, which is another domain for which I am far less prepared to answer those questions. But I can say that, especially in the case of St. Kitts, definitely in December in the Bangladesh series, there were quite a number of cruise visitors that came and looked at the games. Took the opportunity to sunbathe on the grass banks in St. Kitts. In terms of whether we have actively marketed to them, I can't speak to that. My guess would be no, but it would be a guess.
Okay, thank you. But you would appreciate that there's some viability there.
Definitely opportunity there. I agree wholeheartedly.
Go ahead, Dwight.
Okay, I'd like to continue on the question I asked before about some changes to the regional system. On the issue, by the way, in terms of the tournament so far, I think I've kept a track of around 24 of our better batsmen or players who we think should be looking at playing for the West Indies or in the present West Indies team. Only 3 of them have scored a century against either Trinidad, Guyana, or Barbados. Some of those guys, Jason Mohammed, John Campbell, are some of the biggest run scorers in the tournament, and they have fallen short when they have come up against any of these oppositions. So So just something I think we should look on. But back on the issue about how it can be accommodated, because I agree with you. There is an issue of when you have teams playing for their country and wanting to win, and you have a Barbados against Jamaica or a Trinidad against Guyana, there is a rivalry and an energy that comes to the contest that some of the times is very difficult to have in a best of the best series. So the question should be asked one or two things. One, we could look at having two best of the best teams and then promoting the two best regional teams to play against them in a 14 round robin type situation. And there we would get a very competitive situation. I am quite sure that Barbados would want to show that they are not just better than Jamaica, but they are better than any team that you can put together out of the Caribbean in such a scenario. Another way it can be done is to have a new draft. You could ask the teams to remove, say, 5 or 6 players from their squad and open a draft with players who you have selected, who have shown to have been some of the better performers, and through a draft system, have them select players to be reintroduced to their squad. So it would still be Barbados, just a redraft Barbados. You would inculcate the whole Caribbean flavor and a mixing pot, because these guys will eventually have to play with each other. Because there's a concern as well that the franchise system still is a region.
Thank you,
How do you respond?
No, I mean, it's certainly food for thought. And as I said, the concept of a best v best is still quite interesting and feasible in the sense that, you know, it allows for a higher level of competition within the region. So definitely something that we have to look at how, as you said, we can get some intensity into that, you know, of the type that you see when countries are representing, you know, when teams are representing their countries. So definitely food for thought.
Thank you. Mr. Bascom, now, most persons, well, I would say, the persons who watch this channel will know how I feel about the West Indies women head coach. You know, I am not going there this morning, but I'm going to ask you, I'm asking you, sir, and this is a 4-part question, so I'll go 2 first and then the next 2. At what intervals are assessment of our coaches done? And does CWI as an instrument that are used for these evaluation?
So there are annual appraisals, especially for the coaches that are not contractors, like the women's head coach. He is effectively an employee. So there are annual appraisals. But apart from that, there are post-tour evaluations, you know, specific to each of the tours. But more than that, prior to the tours, the coach has to present his plans and his strategies, right? So I can tell you, for example, ahead of the World Cup, the head coach presented the T20 World Cup. The women's head coach presented his plan and strategy to our cricket committee, right? And it was very clear, well laid out, very relevant to the skill sets and resources that we had. And then I would say fairly well executed, if not very well executed at the actual World Cup. And it was pretty much done to the letter of the plan that was submitted and presented, right? So we do have consistent assessments and evaluation and planning ahead of time, so that we can ensure that, you know, we know where we want to go, so we can start preparing the players who are next in line to be able to fit into the brand of play that we are trying to execute at the international level.
Okay. All right. You would have answered one of the follow-up question, but I want to ask you this one. Clearly, the plan to have the women Super 50 at this time of the year instead of its regular slot was strategic for the Cricket World Cup qualifiers. However, the question I want to ask, and I've gotten this feedback also, and I would have thought about it. Are you satisfied with the athleticism of the women players in that tournament? Are you satisfied with their level of fitness? And how do you react to the skill sets, or some would say lack thereof, that were on display?
Well, we always have to take everything in context. We know where the women's program is. The men's program is highly developed. It starts at under 15 in some cases, under 13. Then you have persons with academies around that allows young men to get into the structured cricket at a very early age, right? And that allows you to be able to teach them about the impact that fitness will have on their performance, etc. And so you have a very streamlined pathway. Our women's pathway has not had the benefit of that structure, especially in the early years where you would want to really engage young players and start to instill in them, good habits of sports people generally, right? So we still have to be conscious of that context. And one of my roles is to ensure that we start building in that structure that is needed for our women players to access them at an earlier age, start introducing the professional habits, which would include fitness and skill development. But again, that has to be predicated on an understanding of what we want our senior international players to look like. And I think that we are at a point now where we are a lot clearer in our minds as to what we need to be able to do at the international level to compete with the likes of Australia and England and India, etc. So we are in the process of building out that pathway, that structure, along with the under 23 men's program that CWI has provided funding to territories for. There is also an under 16 girls program that would allow for young ladies to have access to structured cricket. And the hope is that by 2026, based on the success of those territorial program, 2026, we're aiming to have a girls under 15 program. And that we are sure will allow for players, young women to enter structured cricket at probably around 13 years old. And then they will have an under 15 program and an under 19 program. We already have a girls academy. We have started to build out women's franchise cricket. We have some about 14 players on regional franchise contracts across the region. And so we have started to build out that structure for the women's game. And I have no doubts that in probably 3 to 5 years' time, we will be able to effectively mirror the pathway that we have for the men, for the women, and that we will see the benefits of that in terms of the production that we will get at this regional Super 50 tournament.
Yes, we only have 7 minutes to go, and I know, Dwight, you have a few more questions, but I also want to engage the chat. So let's take these two from Bobby together. Bobby's thinking that we should form an alliance with Afghanistan and Nepal. And he's also say, what about bringing in a few foreign players? I think he's probably saying in our domestic cricket competition, but I think that there's room for that. Each franchise can bring in 2 overseas cricketers, but they would have to pay the bill. I think so. So address that for me, please, Mr. Bascom.
Remind me of the first question.
The first question is that you think that we should, yes.
Yeah, so Nepal in particular, I think that we have already started that process. I don't know if you recall, ahead of the World Cup last year, we did send an A team to Nepal to play some T20 matches. A couple players from that A team eventually worked their way into the final World Cup squad. But that was very timely and needed, because it provided a lot of the fringe players who were still being considered an opportunity to go and showcase themselves against international quality opposition. And we are even now still in contact with Nepal about what other initiatives we can do jointly. So that is definitely a work in progress. We don't currently have an existing relationship with Afghanistan, but definitely that is something we are looking for all of those opportunities. As I said, we are aiming to have an extensive A-team program with 1 home tour and 1 away tour, ideally on a reciprocal basis every year. So as many relationships as we could build, then definitely we are going to go in that direction. In terms of the foreign players, it would be interesting to see what type of framework, what would be the benefit of bringing them, right? And will that benefit outweigh the opportunity for another regional player to play? So if you have 2 foreign players, obviously that is 2 less regional players that will participate in our domestic tournaments. And we also do have the CPL where our domestic players, rub shoulders with foreign international players. Whether we can say definitively, sure, anecdotally, we can see in some cases where players talk about the impact that exposure has had on them. But as a whole, whether we can say that has led to any tremendous gains in terms of our development of our T20 players, that's another question that is up for debate. But it's something that, I'm not opposed to. We just have to be able to work out exactly what benefits we are trying to gain and whether those will outweigh the benefits we have from, keeping our domestic competition strictly regional.
That's a very interesting point to make about the opportunity for the regional players if we should invite in foreign players. And because that is one of the big debates in Jamaica where you would have known, because of the world-class status of Jamaica track and field program, there are presently over 200 students from the region that are attending high schools in Jamaica. And that is one of the debate that is raging, if these students from the other Caribbean territories are taking away opportunities from our own high school students. So I understand that point. We are dead on time now, just 2 minutes, Dwight, so I will allow you to go ahead, Dwight, with your question.
Oh, wow. There was a quick question about whether or not the region, from a West Indies Cricket Board level, if there's any intervention that you can make in terms of having some of our players play in overseas conditions. But apart from that, I think my real question is, you have mentioned that there's been a lot of changes that you'll be implementing in terms of the selection policy going forward. We know some of those, but some of the other things that we don't know is that you have mentioned that players will not seem to be selected based on averages, that there will be an in-depth analysis. Now, how much communication have you done with the teams and with the players so that a player doesn't feel hard done, that he has this excellent average and he believes that somebody else is good? What are the metrics you use?
So effectively, what we're trying to do with our selection is we are trying to work from the team needs. So what are the needs of our West Indies, whichever format team, right? What are the skill sets that are required? What are the roles that are required for us to be able to compete? And then we work from there to selecting players. So now players are going to be selected based on how well they are able to execute the roles, right? So an average may not tell you all you need to know about how well a player could execute the role, right? So we need to know whether or not the player, what strike rate, for example, becomes important in T20 and one-day cricket. The ability to rotate the strike, the ability to play against spin, right? In the middle overs of a 50-over game, we know that we're going to get a lot of spin, and teams have tried to exploit us based on, what they perceive as our inability to play spin. So those are the types of questions that are going to be asked. And what we have done is that we have engaged a senior talent manager. Now, while the senior talent manager is part of the selection process, he is not necessarily a selector. So he will pool the selection data, all of that data that we will gather from our territorial talent identifiers, which is apart from the stats, because the stats will get on Cricinfo. But apart from the stats, that qualitative data, the ability to rotate strike, how did they handle the short ball? Were they able to put pressure back on the bowling team? Were they able to recognize when, they needed to soak up some pressure? Those types of questions that would help us to build a profile of the player and be able to determine whether or not they have the skill set and the tactical awareness to be able to execute the roles that are needed in the squad. And that senior talent manager will be the person who is the conduit between the head coach and the high performance team to the players, to ensure that they understand where they sit in terms of their skills and abilities and tactical awareness, and what areas they have to work on to be able to move themselves up the queue and get closer and closer to a selection. And just generally about letting them know what roles in the team that they're being considered for, whether they're on a short list or a long list, and what additional skills, what deficiencies they currently have, that is preventing them from being, right at the forefront of selection. So that is the system that we want to use, where the head coach plans the strategy for the team. He breaks it out into roles, and then for each roles we talk about the skills and the tactical sort of abilities that a player must have to be able to execute this role at the international level. And then we start to build depth charts about which players who are best suited and who might be next in the pipeline, and then what do all of these players who are in the pipeline need to be able to do or add to their games, to keep moving themselves up. And then we let competition pretty much take care of the rest. Once everybody is on the same level in terms of their skill set and their tactical awareness, their ability to perform the role, then it becomes a case of which player has done it more effectively in our regional tournaments and more consistently, and then selection sort of becomes, a pretty much straightforward process.
Yes. Fitzroy Jom, I noticed you would have said that we don't need foreign players, but I don't think it is as black and white as that. I respect your opinion, Fitzroy, but look at it this way. If the Jamaican taxpayers say that we don't need the students from the other Caribbean countries to be in our country, the joy that we all felt when Julian Alfred won that 100 meters at the Olympics, maybe it would never have happened. So I do not think it is just as straightforward as that, as we don't need foreign players. I don't think it is as black and white like that. Just before I make a final comment, Mr. Bascom, because I must give you a reaction to the poll, and I'm happy to announce that 48% of the persons who have done the poll have given you a mark above 3, and only 26% have given you a mark below 3. So that's not a bad outcome. 48% believe that you are doing a very good job. 26% believe you are average, and 26% believe you are not doing a good job. Your final comments, Mr. Bascom.
Well, I'll take that. In our Caribbean society, I mean, you do expect criticism, and everybody wouldn't agree with you, which is fine. But what I hope is that through forum like this, through a forum like this, that at least some of the thinking behind some of the initiatives that have been implemented and the direction that we're trying to go can be shared. And whether or not you agree with it, I think it's important that as many people as possible understand, what we are trying to do, why we are implementing some of the things that we are implementing, and then it gives you a good position from which you can start to look at results, right? Because now you understand, well, this might have been a consequence of something that happened before, and you're able to get some perspective, which I think is key, and which, if nothing else, I hope that I am able to provide through coming on your program. So thank you very much for the platform. I'm sure that at some point you will invite me back, and I'll be happy to come back. I think Dwight has a few more tricky deliveries up his sleeve that he didn't get to do.
You've done
today.
pretty well to get 48% on this platform. Is pretty good.
Mr. Bascom, I must tell you that the number one objective, or the only objective on this platform, is West Indies cricket. That's we are a West Indies fan channel. It's the biggest independent fan channel that covers West Indies cricket. I'm not talking about mainstream media or CWI, but no other YouTube channel is as big as ours that covers West Indies cricket. And our only objective is for the success of West Indies cricket. That being said, however, we don't bowl off volleys here very often. We are very, very critical of the West Indies administration and so on. And that's why Dwight said, for you to get 48% in this community, it should be considered well done. Your final comment, Dwight?
No, I'm looking forward to having Mr. Bascom back. I really like his openness and his willingness to meet and communicate with the fans, which is something that we complained about for years. And we're just wishing you all the best. We are all rooting for your success. Even you may come up with an initiative that we may say, oh, we don't like that initiative, but we're all behind you and supporting you and hoping for your success. All right?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm going to let you go now, Mr. Bascom, but I just want to show you an example. When the West Indies is losing a match, we may have 3,000-4,000 viewers. When Shamar Joseph bowled West Indies to victory, we had over 60,000. So it is very important for us that West Indies keep winning. And whatsoever we said here is to help to contribute to that winning. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, take care.
You too, sir.